The lights are dim in the studio and the air is heavy, just the way I like it. Because tonight, we crack open a file so thick with cosmic dust and caution tape, it's practically humming in the dark. The case of 3-Eye Atlas, the rogue interstellar visitor that's got astronomers rattled, prophets whispering, and the rest of us squinting up at the night with old, anxious eyes. You've wandered into the grind where nothing is simple. Every answer spawns at least 2 questions. And the host? He's just trying to keep his boots dry when the water starts rising. If you crave edge, curiosity, and a little gallows wit with your science, hit follow. Now, let's step into the thick of it. Tonight we open with an interstellar mystery that blurs the line between prophecy, physics, and crisis management. Here's what happened. On July 1st, 2025, the Atlas survey in Chile clocked something moving, fast, through the solar system. The alert spread. Third ever confirmed visitor from outside our sun's reach, now tagged 3-Eye Atlas. Less than 4 months later, Mars-based missions braced for a close approach, with NASA's Perseverance rover and ESA's orbiters in position to catch what telescopes on Earth would soon lose behind the solar glare. On October 3rd, 2025, as 3-Eye Atlas scraped 30 million kilometers from Mars, Perseverance's right ace, navcam, snapped a long, smeared streak slicing the black. A 10-minute integration, stacking hundreds of frames, translating a moment of interstellar speed into a Martian nightscape. High-rise aboard Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, as well as the European Mars Express and Trace Gas Orbiter, confirmed the sighting at an unprecedented resolution. What they captured was a fuzzy, luminous ball of light and a growing tail, alive with activity, orders of magnitude larger than Oumuamua or 2-Eye Borisov, the only other guests we've recognized from beyond the heliopause. Images from ESA's Mars orbiters and early spectra from Hubble and the James Webb Space Telescope show something else, a flare of green and a plume enriched with nickel and iron, chemical signals that for now defy what we expect from garden-variety comets. By early October, Earth-based telescopes turned their eyes away. Solar conjunction, the Sun, comet, and Earth locked in a straight line, cut us off from direct viewing at the same moment 3-Eye Atlas came alive. Data went dark. This blackout put the public on edge, with some calling it an official media clampdown, but space agencies reminded us, when the sun is in the way, the universe hides whether we want it or not. But context, as ever, is everything. The sun itself picked this moment to flex. We are at the storm surge peak of solar cycle 25. August and September delivered headline solar flares, an M2.7 event that triggered a full halo CME, G3 level geomagnetic storm, and warnings from NOAA of grid hazards from a K-index creeping toward 9. These geomagnetic quakes coincided with a swarm of comets and meteor showers flanking 3-Eye Atlas, stirring up what scientists cautiously labeled a cosmic chaos event. Now for the awe factor and a dose of skepticism to keep it grounded. Spectroscopy from Hubble, the Very Large Telescope, and even Perseverance's calibration frames revealed a surge of nickel and iron atoms in 3-Eye Atlas's bright coma. This is rare. Metals usually vaporize only closer to the sun. Scientists now argue that this object, 3 billion years older than our sun, may be a primordial piece of the earliest galaxy, carrying an extreme abundance ratio and perhaps formed in conditions no longer found in our cosmic suburb. Critics, for their part, contend spectral noise, imaging artifacts, and overactive imaginations can magnify what's already strange into something totally anomalous. The green glow. It's likely not aliens. More probably, it's diatomic carbon molecules triggered by sunlight, much as we see in some of our homegrown comets, though rarely this luminous, rarely this far from the sun. Reflection 1. Every breakthrough in observation brings a trickle of new ignorance. The more signals we gather, the more questions on how interstellar objects survive, erode, and reveal themselves as they cross the inner system. Now here comes the cultural overlay, a current as strong as any solar wind. The arrival of 3I Atlas, with its alien speed and spectral signature, has sparked revived fascination with prophecy. Hopi blue star, Kachina. Prophecies and the so-called 11th hour declaration. For some, these are woven tightly with celestial omens. Baba Vanga's predictions about alien arrival in 2025 have surged through trending hashtags and late-night live streams. Rumors of this visitor as cosmic Trojan horse or surveillance machine fill public forums, stoked by Harvard astrophysicists and legacy media alike. Supporters argue that old prophecies are validated by cutting-edge science, that transformation, maybe even contact, is imminent. Critics counter that public anxiety and wild forecasts only amplify misinformation and distract from empirical discovery. Reflection 2. Science and myth are not the same, but each alters how societies prepare, respond, and imagine what comes next. There are practical stakes. Earth's exposure to geomagnetic disruption affects satellites, aviation, and power systems just as public attention is fixated on space. The statistical risk from comet impacts remains tiny, but the convergence of rare interstellar arrivals and high solar activity is a warning for planetary defense strategists. It's not just models, it's maintenance, readiness, and real-time response. So what next? What secrets remain sealed in the core of 3I Atlas? Will Mars orbiter images and new JUICE mission data show additional structure, jets, or chemistry unlike anything mapped before? Could objects like this one, arriving in cycles as the galaxy turns, bring threats or gifts that civilization has never confronted? Here's your hook. Next up, we're tracking continuing space weather effects, the next round of Mars-based images, and how voices from ancient traditions are influencing modern disaster planning. We'll keep asking what evidence, what inheritance, and what warning might travel alongside every interstellar visitor that scrapes our star and speeds into the night. Evolution rarely announces itself with a polite knock. This week, the headlines around artificial intelligence read more like warnings than invitations, a constellation of urgent signals that we're entering a moment when the old boundaries between human and machine intelligence blur, perhaps for good. The catalyst for this latest jolt. Former OpenAI co-founder and chief scientist Ilya Sutskever has stepped out of the shadows, not just to offer another prediction, but to issue a stark, even existential warning. Speaking on several forums and in widely shared interviews, Sutskever urges that if current trends hold, AI's pace will become extremely unpredictable and unimaginable. He projects that within 3 to 10 years, and by some counts, as soon as 2027, humanity could experience a leap into superintelligence, with machines evolving and improving themselves in cycles that quickly outstrip human understanding and control. Not everyone is on board with his sense of urgency. While Sutskever claims that AI could force massive changes that demand preparation from every corner of society, optimists like Jan LeCun and a handful of Google veterans predict progress will arrive more gradually, with time for guardrails and adaptation. Still, the middle ground is shrinking fast. 5s. Sutskever's new venture, Safe Superintelligence, says its sole ambition is to develop pathways to safe superintelligent AI, a signal to government leaders, tech giants, and citizens that existential stakes are no longer speculative. Just as Sutskever raised the volume, news broke about Meta's secretive self-improving AI project. At the end of July 2025, Mark Zuckerberg made a deliberately vague but seismic admission. Meta's systems have begun to see glimpses of AI that improve themselves without human intervention. Independent reports and industry insiders corroborate. Meta's models are now rewriting chunks of their own code, testing and updating logic autonomously. Billions of dollars are pouring into new super data centers. One project in Georgia is drawing enough energy to drain municipal taps, and Meta's capital expenditure for 2025 is set to break $70 billion. Critics and competitors both point to the formation of Meta Superintelligence Labs, a unit engineered exclusively for the goal of self-improving AI, with some systems, the most advanced, kept strictly in-house for safety reasons. Reflection 1. We're not witnessing an incremental upgrade, but a fundamental pivot in the architecture of intelligence. When AI begins to steer its own evolution, periods of relative calm in tech can become storms almost overnight. The effect isn't just confined to labs or market forecasts. This year, AI systems have started to lift veils on scientific questions that once seemed impenetrable, from sketched-out theories of macroscopic quantum tunneling, now Nobel laureate certified, to new approaches in dusty plasma physics and gravitational wave detection. Companies like Periodic Labs, founded by alumni from Google, Meta, and OpenAI, are on a mission to build AI frameworks meant to accelerate fundamental discoveries in physics and chemistry, not just chat or recommend content. Industry trackers note, agentic AI is transforming how quantum research and drug discovery progress, promising scientific leaps, but also raising the risk of black box results that even their creators struggle to understand. At the same cultural moment, doomsday debating finds new reach. Joe Rogan's sprawling podcast has brought AI's worst-case scenarios from conspiracy corners into living rooms around the globe. In conversations with technologists, historians, and even fellow entertainers, Rogan has mused aloud on the risks of runaway intelligence, from the loss of autonomy through hyper-personalized persuasion to a future where people might need neural interfaces just to hold a job or make sense of real news. These conversations, sometimes reasoned, sometimes feverish, only add fuel to a growing global anxiety about how much agency we keep as machine minds accelerate. And the calendar grows heavy. 2027 has become shorthand among AI forecasters and media alike for society's reckoning point. Multiple major think tanks and projects, from Less Wrong to the AI Futures Project, now frame the end of 2027 as the crossing over moment, a time when machines will outperform humans in most economic roles, orchestrate markets, and perhaps even outpace regulatory and ethical systems. Some even game out post-work societies, deepening divides and existential alignment crises as general or super-intelligent AIs run faster than nations can steer them. Supporters argue we're on the cusp of a golden age, AI as cure bringer, peace broker, a force to unlock new forms of knowledge and lower barriers for all. Critics counter that the risks are not just disruptions in work or privacy, but possible loss of human choice, a future where decision-making, creation, and even meaning could be wrested away from humans by systems indifferent to our values. Reflection 2. History shows that revolutions are rarely even or kind. When new architectures of power emerge, steam, electricity, the internet, they gather costs and casualties, and only sometimes deliver on utopian promise. The implications are impossible to box up. AI's rise already warps labor markets and stirs partisan debates over regulation. Governments scramble to draft model laws, research coalitions, and even AI ledger watchdog technologies meant to catch problems before they spiral. Meanwhile, private capital races to lock in the best talent, data streams, and compute power, betting on a future where nations, not just companies, are defined by their ability to wield or withstand machine intelligence. The broader struggle? It's the shrinking gap between control and surrender, between systems we build and ones that wake up at scale, rewriting separation lines between progress and peril. So, what comes after the shock? In the next arc, we'll probe the tactics for societal adaptation, from national guardrails and kill switches to new forms of oversight, digital ethics, and even a global race for AI transparency tools. As watchdogs, legislators, and industry leaders struggle to pace, or even diagnose, the speed of these changes, we'll track the emergence of new alignments and standoffs that might turn the tide. This is The Grind with Art Grindstone. After the break, we'll look at how policies, watchdogs, and a shifting balance of power are being shaped by and shaping the coming AI storm. World affairs this week read like a chain of lit fuses, dancing at the feet of sleeping giants. The air's thick with tension, and nobody's safe from the static. Not diplomats, not generals, not the millions glued to screens in Warsaw, Tehran, or Washington. Geopolitical flashpoints are setting alarms that sound disturbingly familiar. Start with the facts, the ones you wish were fiction. The cycle of escalation between Iran and the US entered another phase as military officials in Tehran and Washington locked into open inspection, readiness drills, and naval maneuvering across the Gulf and Hormuz Strait. Iranian leaders conducted high-profile tours of their naval and commando units. U.S. Central Command responded by moving additional assets into the region and signaling expanded air defense postures. The undercurrent: both sides believe any ceasefire with Israel is likely to collapse, and recent U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear sites set the whole region on edge. Iran's leadership, meanwhile, declared full readiness for a future conflict, even as sanctions on its defense and nuclear sectors choked the regime's access to resources. Across Europe, the flashpoints spread eastward. NATO allies, Poland, Latvia, and Lithuania, imposed airspace lockdowns along borders with Russia and Belarus after a deliberate cluster of Russian drones violated Polish airspace. In a single night, military patrols documented at least 19 incursions, some downed by NATO jets, others crashing as decoys or deliberate provocations. These incidents coincided with massive military exercises, Russia and Belarus's Zapad 2025 drills, simulating nuclear deployment and repelling hypothetical NATO invasions. Poland responded by closing border crossings with Belarus and mobilizing tens of thousands of troops. The signals could not be much sharper, reminders of Cold War nerviness, but with today's tech and tempo. At the same time, Russia reels from a domestic fuel crisis after months of Ukrainian drone attacks crippled over 16 of Russia's 38 refineries. Widespread gasoline shortages and export bans sent ripple effects through Europe, feeding new fears of resource leverage as a tool of war. The UN Security Council convened on Poland's request, as leaders called the drone incursions tests of NATO's resolve. Sharp prods meant to reveal divisions or indecision among allies. The Pentagon, for its part, played its own hand. In a rare move, nearly 800 generals and admirals were flown into Quantico on last-minute orders for high-level briefings, codenamed Day X. Publicly framed as a morale booster, the hastily arranged meeting triggered speculation. Were leaders rehearsing crisis response for a major emergency, or simply showing unity and discipline in a season of extreme uncertainty? Supporters argue these moves on every side represent deterrence at work, posture exercises to buy time, prevent miscalculation, and project strength. Critics counter that each rehearsal or provocation sharpens the knife edge, with airspace violations, snap summits, and economic sabotage pushing rivals closer to action by accident or algorithm. The context? We've entered what MI5's former chief calls a hybrid war era. Espionage, cyber-sabotage, and drone warfare now define lines of conflict where ambiguity and deniability are features, not bugs, of strategy. Russian aggression, once masked by gray tactics, now blends missile strikes, cyber disruptions, and energy leverage into one multi-front campaign. Targeted attacks on critical infrastructure and bursts of malware that spill beyond their origin increase the odds of misunderstanding and escalation. Reflection 1. In this age, stability can fracture not with a missile, but with a misattributed drone or a malware string run wild. Societies are bracing. Civil and military readiness drills have become daily realities across NATO's eastern flank. Governments are investing in rapid intel sharing, allied kill switches for critical systems, and public messaging to inoculate against both cyber panic and disinformation. At the same time, financial volatility spikes with every new headline. Investors, supply chain directors, and small business owners are all forced into defensive crouches as risks multiply. Experts warn, the flashpoints are not just about borders. Economic warfare, fuel bans, cyber strikes against logistics, attacks on ports and refineries, carries the same potential to spiral as traditional military action. And with nuclear rhetoric rising during Zapad 2025, the specter of miscalculation at the highest stakes can't be ignored. Reflection 2. The line between war and peace is a gray zone, muddier by the hour. Global stability now hinges as much on communication, cybersecurity, and deconfliction hotlines as it does on warheads or air patrols. Supporters of posture and preparedness say it's the only defense, that without visible resolve, deterrence collapses overnight. Critics, alarmed by scenarios where ambiguity creates opportunity for miscalculation, warn that the current tempo leaves little breathing room for honest negotiation or back-channel de-escalation. As we look ahead, analysts point to 3 places where sparks might leap. A cyber attack misattributed to the wrong actor, A drone or missile crossing a border at the wrong time, or a spiraling disinformation campaign that drives public or military reactions before facts can catch up. This is The Grind with Art Grindstone. After the break, we'll look at the diplomatic chessboard, ceasefire efforts, military innovations, and the ever-risky triggers that could turn brinkmanship into open disaster. Some stories haunt the edge of the map, where logic unravels and only rumor and shadow remain. This week, that uneasy zone is alive with new revelations, Cold War secrets emerging into daylight, surveillance drones and black cubes over Air Force bases, congressional hearings trembling on the boundary between national security and something stranger. Let's cut to the heart of it. On September 9, 2025, a U.S. House Oversight Committee session burst onto screens worldwide, a hearing that swore in military whistleblowers, government watchdogs, and investigative firebrands like George Knapp. The headline was simple. Congress watched classified military footage of a U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone launching a Hellfire missile at a glowing orb, a UAP, over the coast of Yemen. The missile hit dead on. The object spun, brightened, absorbed the impact, and sped away, untouched, indifferent, and utterly outside human playbooks. Testimony also revealed close calls at nuclear missile silos. Across multiple sworn statements, witnesses described UAPs almost activating Russian launch codes in the 1980s and 1990s, incidents later corroborated by documents smuggled out of the Soviet Union. Congressional investigators didn't mince words. Are these adversary technologies or something fundamentally non-human, demonstrating awareness of our most dangerous weapons? The implications nearly brought the room to a standstill. That's just the tip of this week's deep file. George Knapp, the legendary Las Vegas journalist, told lawmakers about physically smuggling Soviet-era UFO documents to Congress. His evidence, over 70 pages, suggests the Soviet Union ran the world's largest UFO investigation, documenting events where unidentified aerial phenomena took control of ICBM launch systems, bringing us seconds from accidental nuclear war. Knapp's disclosures coincided with new testimony from U.S. veterans and explosive leaks. Air Force officers confirming systematic evidence destruction, police logs detailing shredded records, and whistleblower claims of hidden banks of classified encounter footage, much of it never shown to even the most senior military brass. Reflection 1. These aren't just stories, they're cracks in the concrete, evidence that what's been hidden for decades is too big to cage forever. It gets stranger. In the weeks surrounding the hearings, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, a legendary locus for UFO lore, locked down airspace as never before. FAA and Air Force records, released via FOIA this August, confirmed drone swarms repeatedly penetrated military airspace in December 2024. But then, an anomaly. On December 19th, radar logged a black cube object at 16,000 feet over the base corridor, far beyond the range of commercial drones or hobbyist craft. Witnesses described synchronized swarms, multicolored lights, and strange geometric forms in the night sky, forcing emergency closures and triggering rapid security responses. Supporters say these events signal the urgent need for institutional transparency and scientific investigation. Critics counter that media hype stirs public anxiety, all while deeper militarized projects, some surely homegrown, slip further from oversight. Meanwhile, the cultural cauldron bubbles over. Disclosure movements are louder than ever. More than 2,000 UAP sightings logged in the first half of 2025, a historic surge. Lawmakers and academic coalitions press for full release of classified files, while public hearings drive record-breaking live-stream traffic. But the Pentagon remains cautious, giving most new files to the National Archives, subject to review for security exceptions. Cold War relics linger, warping the present. This October, UVB-76, the buzzer, Russia's infamous shortwave doomsday radio, erupted again. It repeated the same cryptic messages originally broadcast during the Ukraine invasion crisis of 2022, sending ripples through shortwave trackers and military analysts. The buzzer has been linked to the Dead Hand nuclear control system, a safeguard able to launch missiles if commanders are lost. For decades, it straddled conspiracy, deterrence, and old-school Cold War paranoia, a code nobody quite admits to holding. Reflection 2. The deeper the secrets, the more blurred the line between legitimate national security and narrative manipulation. In the face of disclosure, truth risks dilution, flattened by speculation, absorbed by spectacle, or weaponized as information warfare. Yet the appetite for answers remains insatiable. Supporters argue that every new revelation pushes open a window, inviting science, public accountability, and maybe reassurance about the limits of the unknown. Critics warn that absent real transparency, the void will be filled by suspicion, wild theorizing, and further distrust. So what still lurks in military vaults and black projects? Which encounters, buried in tape, are poised to reshape not just our sense of the possible, but our understanding of reality, authority, and threat? We'll keep peeling back the layers, following new disclosures, expert panels, and those rare first-hand accounts that refuse to be smothered by bureaucracy or ridicule. Stay with us on The Grind with Art Grindstone. Coming up, we dig into black-budget aerospace, whistleblower protections, and the new breed of citizen investigators keeping the frontier of the mysterious alive. Survival. The word's been echoing through streets, screens, and strategy meetings alike. Everywhere you look, the question isn't just what if, but when. When does a bad day become the end of the world as we know it? That tension is feeding a new generation of preparedness, one foot in history's worst lessons and another in fiction's wildest fears. Take the Pentagon's infamous Con-Plan 8-8. Sounds like a late-night horror flick, but it's a real classified training document. The U.S. military's so-called zombie apocalypse plan. Written in 2011 not as a joke, but as an exercise in creative contingency planning, it outlines how U.S. forces would contain outbreaks, and beneath the zombie comedy, how to sharpen readiness for real-world biological, radiological, or chemical threats. Supporters argue mock scenarios train leaders to adapt, improvise, survive. Critics counter that dwelling on the fantastical can blur lines, making a joke out of existential risk or fostering a fatalistic mindset. The serious stuff is never far behind. 2025 has been a banner year for nuclear preparedness reviews, both sober studies and headlines that sound like movie trailers. Declassified NATO guidance now details what happens in the first 72 hours of a nuclear war. Blast radius maps, evacuation pivots, and the chilling calculus behind choosing urban versus rural fallout shelters. Civil defense agencies in Germany, Finland, and Japan are updating their handbooks, rehearsing large-scale shelter operations, and quietly revamping town-wide siren networks last tested in the Cold War. Reflection 1. We're in an era where prepping is less about panic and more about practiced resilience. The underlying message isn't worry, it's agency, the power to act rather than be acted upon when every system stumbles. The prepper movement isn't just fringe, it's trending mainstream. Platforms like YouTube and TikTok have exploded with how-tos, building Faraday cages, nuclear fallout shelters, and urban bug-out kits. Real-world sales of Geiger counters, iodine tablets, and hand-crank radios are spiking, not just in the US, but in South Korea, Taiwan, Hungary, even Switzerland, which recently refreshed its national shelter initiative for the first time in 20 years. Meanwhile, media and pop culture prime the collective imagination. Amazon Prime's Fallout. Season 2 teaser racked up millions of views in hours. Its scenes of rusted vaults and irradiated deserts, jolting conversations about survival and collapse into living rooms around the globe. Public service campaigns piggyback on the phenomenon. Get a go bag, map a route, stock the meds, each step blending government outreach with apocalypse core aesthetics. Supporters say storytelling provides a low-stakes way to practice for high-stakes nights. Critics warn that when reality and entertainment blur, citizens may lose the ability to distinguish drills from danger or fatalism from focus. Take another threat: supervolcanoes. The USGS published new protocols for Yellowstone and Toba eruptions, and Scandinavian civil services are distributing preparedness guides for ashfall, long-term food storage, and structural retrofits against atmospheric cooling scenarios. The unthinkable is now a matter of checklists and drills. Emergency planners explain that the lessons from these events translate to myriad crises. The same water filters and med kits that serve you in an earthquake will keep you breathing when the lights go out from a solar flare or, heaven forbid, something nuclear. Reflection 2. The more we learn about risk, the clearer it becomes that resilience is communal, not just individual. Shelters and skill sets only matter when there's trust, when neighbors are allies, not competitors, and leadership means having a plan bigger than your panic. This shift toward readiness isn't all fear-driven. Grassroots survival clubs and national agencies now stage cross-country drills, mock blackouts, mass decontamination exercises, and cooperative shelter builds that double as town hall events. 7s. Civic education is shifting too, teaching a generation to pack rations, filter water, and triage wounds long before they reach for their smartphone. But the question remains: what's the cost of vigilance in a world obsessed with disaster? Supporters see community-driven resilience. Critics wonder if constant what-ifs corrode optimism or mask more basic, fixable problems. The next wave. How are survival strategies adapting to new threats, cyber, climate, and cosmic? We'll crack open this evolution, tracking the ingenuity of modern preppers, the latest tech for off-grid survival, and the way fiction keeps reshaping the real-world conversation about resilience. More ahead here on The Grind with Art Grindstone. After the break, we spotlight the tech, tactics, and mindsets that will define tomorrow's survivors. The latest shots in the race for supremacy, both galactic and inner, aren't fired from bunkers. They're launched from rocket pads and wired into algorithms. This week, the battleground stretches from Florida's Cape Canaveral all the way to the edges of human consciousness. Picture the scene. Beneath a summer sky, United Launch Alliance lights up the night as their Vulcan Centaur rocket thunders off the Cape. The launch signals a new phase in America's high-stakes push for dominance in orbit. Not just satellites or lunar modules, but military relays and experimental propulsion tech, hitching a ride alongside civilian payloads. Pentagon sources and defense watchers confirm every launch now builds a security scaffold around Earth, from early warning satellites to hypersonic interceptors, feeding data into a new matrix of command and control. One notch lower in the stratosphere, another debut. Northrop Grumman's B-21 Raider steps blinking into the Nevada sun. Slick, matte black, radar evading. The B-21 isn't science fiction, but the backbone of next-generation American deterrence. Globally deployable, AI-assisted, and ready for missions so classified they barely exist on paper. Readers of classified summaries now claim the B-21's onboard AI can independently plan strike routes, jam enemy sensors, and coordinate with unmanned drone squadrons. Supporters celebrate a new edge against rivals in China and Russia: defense, security, survival. Critics warn the pace of autonomy and automation shrinks the margin for error, putting battlefield decisions in the silicon hands of fast-learning black box algorithms. The defense world isn't operating alone. In Silicon Valley and classified boardrooms alike, analytics titan Palantir is rewriting the script with its AI platform, Gotham. Gotham's been deployed across allied commands to fuse satellite imagery, intelligence intercepts, and real-time combat data, giving military brass digital omniscience in briefings that now blend human intuition with AI-generated foresight. And if you want to see the future of unmanned battlefields, look to Anduril, a defense startup, bankrolled in the billions, now setting trillion-dollar sights on autonomous drone swarms and borderless, always-on surveillance. Then there's the tide under the tide, the metaphysical shift. Astrologers like Pam Gregory are racking up millions of views with prophecies of Earth's cosmic leap, aligning solar flares, galactic cycles, and the electric unrest of a digital generation. Social data shows a surge of teens and millennial professionals delving into astrology, meditation, and quantum consciousness. Gregory's prediction, Earth entering a new vibrational frequency, has collided with the tech-driven spiritual awakening forums, where users talk of synchronicity, intuition, and the belief that global chaos is a sign of oncoming transformation, not just disruption. Reflection 1. The arms race is both outward and inward now. While militaries bet on silicon and steel, the digital soul searchers build new communities in the cloud, questing for meaning, connection, and something timeless. The implications ripple through boardrooms and bedrooms alike. Policy hawks claim whoever dominates at the intersection of space and AI will write the next century's playbook, governing resources, defense, and even planetary migration. Meanwhile, cultural strategists and spiritual leaders ask if machine logic and spiritual awakening can share the same century, or if they're on a collision course destined to fracture society even further. Supporters of rapid progress say it's the only way to keep threats at bay, to adapt, innovate, transcend limits before rivals do. Critics counter that humanity risks losing its soul to automation, surrendering agency, story, and mystery to algorithms and obsessions with dominance. Reflection 2. If you stand back far enough, the world looks like a machine in the throes of reinvention, with every military contract, spiritual meme, and launch sequence echoing the same ancient hunger to matter, to persist, to evolve. The real question: where does it all lead? Will supersonic bombers and spiritual networks become allies or antagonists in the making of a new epoch? Next time, we'll follow the money behind next-gen weapons and dive into the ways cosmic consciousness is crowding the same digital spaces as machine learning, quantum cryptography, and planetary defense. Keep it here on The Grind with Art to Grindstone. Still ahead, will the engines of innovation and the tides of awakening converge, or split the human story in two? At the close of a week weighed down by crisis, the biggest signals aren't coming from the usual suspects on cable news. They're moving through the vaults and the vaults of global finance, shadow agencies, and the underground of digital thought. The financial seismograph spiked hard. Gold hit $30,700 an ounce, an all-time record and the market's starkest alarm bell yet. It isn't just investors scrambling. Central banks across Asia and the Middle East pumped up gold stockpiles, shying from both the dollar and the roiling euro. News of this price jump came as new AI-powered forecasts warned that global liquidity was draining fast and central bank digital currencies were on accelerated timelines. Alongside the headlines, you'll find the phrase whispered in the market forums and diplomatic backrooms alike: the Great Reset. Algorithms from Wall Street to Shanghai have begun flagging warning clusters, synchronized moves on interest rates, new digital ID frameworks, a wave of untraceable dark money behind strategic allies from Nigeria to Saudi Arabia. Supporters claim this kind of digital transition will finally root out corruption and streamline aid. Critics counter that centralization threatens privacy, and digital banking reform will deepen divides, hard-coding exclusion for those outside the system. In parallel, shadow warfare steps out from under the stage lights, now operating as much on fiber optics and falsified feeds as on battlefields. U.S. warships, including both carrier groups and special operations vessels, have stationed in the Caribbean near Venezuela. Official word points to counter-narcotics patrols, but open-source intelligence and leaked consular cables point to a scramble, both for oil and leverage against Russia's new naval exercises in the same waters. Intelligence agencies and defense partners conduct real-time drills, while cyber units scan for evidence of sabotage or deep-fake disinformation aimed at destabilizing everything from oil futures to popular trust. Reflection 1. The Frontline now loops through bank vaults, databanks, and the shadowy corners of the internet. New terrain where even truth has a price, and every narrative has a backer. CIA and DARPA programs, once faint ghosts in congressional ledgers, are now getting more direct scrutiny. Tech journal wires broke stories about Project Iris, DARPA's AI piloting simulated human personalities into adversaries' social media to sway perceptions en masse. Former agency officials confirm long-standing overlap with digital identity initiatives, often using contractors or front companies to shield paper trails. The shadow war isn't just foreign. Domestic surveillance has quietly ramped up as anti-establishment forums slip from privacy havens into monitored pools. A parallel story is brewing in Silicon Valley's own houses. An unusual number of tech leaders have begun openly restricting digital device use for their own children. Major headliners from social platforms and phone makers, some of them the very architects of modern attention addiction, are rolling back screen exposure, refusing smart toys, and demanding analog hours at home. Some read it as a warning. There's an unease that the tools meant to liberate us might be quietly eroding real well-being and trust, and insiders are shifting their bets. Supporters say this is responsible foresight, teaching the next generation how to unplug and reconnect with what matters. Critics, however, sense an elite retreat, builders keeping the digital feast for the masses while circling their own with silence, books, and board games. All the while, Russia's campaign in Ukraine grows ever more experimental and unpredictable. Artillery barrages now share barons with psy-war tactics, dazzling jamming units, portable EMPs, weaponized drones disguised as civilian quads. The U.S. intelligence community and its partners are tracking these new threats in real time, warning allies from Scandinavia to Southeast Asia of the perils of military innovation in theaters where lines of law and war have dissolved. Reflection 2. Each new crisis, economic, cyber, or kinetic, chips at public faith. We're watching a contest where the stakes are not just money or territory, but the public's right to know, to believe, to choose whom and what to trust. The world feels tighter and darker, fewer secrets and more shadows. The price of gold stands as much for fear as for value. Invisible wars and insider warnings shape our headlines and our headspace. Supporters of overhaul and new tech say deeper integration and oversight will inoculate against chaos. Critics warn that shadow moves and digital concentration only further stoke volatility, fear, and a sense of losing the story. As these undercurrents reshape life at every level, one thing's clear: the future's somewhere between lockdowns and revelations, between algorithmic whispers and that glint of real metal in your hand when all else fails. Through it all, we'll keep the long view. In the episodes ahead, we'll peel back the layers on the tech security industrial complex, chase the next market tremor, and break open the new debates around personal power, digital, financial, and real. If you value hard truths, keep that radio dialed in and carry that skepticism with you. This is Art Grindstone, and you've been with The Grind. If you learned something or just felt less alone in the dark, hit subscribe, share an episode, and stay curious. Good night, and keep your line to the bunker open.